If you look at a map of Burlington, Vermont, you'll notice some highway ramps to nowhere at the I-189 and US Route 7 interchange. Like many cities that had ambitious highway building plans in the mid-20th century, this full interchange was built in anticipation of a highway extension that never happened. But now, 40 years after construction of the interchange and 60 years after the highway was first envisioned, the Champlain Parkway project will finally make use of the full interchange and try to create a more direct route to bring cars from I-89 directly into downtown Burlington. But the question remains, is reviving a 60-year-old highway plan in a different format still compatible with the 21st century goals of an environmentally conscious city? And will building a new highway finally fix traffic? In the 1960s, a document called the Greater Burlington Urban Area Highway Plan envisioned a 4-lane freeway called the Burlington Beltline, which would run north to south along the city's western edge. Part of that proposed highway was actually constructed in the north end, now known as Route 127. But the portion of the highway through downtown was later considered infeasible due to the amount of property acquisition and funding required. Around the same time, the I-189 spur route from I-89 had already been constructed to Route 7, essentially as it looks today. With the Beltline plan, I-189 would have continued straight westward to a new interchange, but that plan was scrapped when the Beltline was canceled. However, the city of Burlington was still interested in some kind of southern limited access road to bring highway traffic into the central business district, even if it didn't continue all the way through downtown as originally proposed. A new plan was created in the 1970s, and with the Beltline project having lost support, this plan was renamed the Southern Connector. So forget all your opposition to the old project, this is a totally different project with a new name. This highway would pick up from the Route 7 interchange but curve northward until it matched the previous Beltline routing, and then continue towards downtown. So basically the same idea, just no segments to the south of I-189. In order to avoid taking additional private property, part of the highway would have run through an area called the Pine Street Barge Canal, or should I say, the Pine Street Barge Canal Superfund site. Well, that can't be good for anyone. The EPA found all sorts of oil and coal contamination and determined that construction of a highway through this site would release a bunch of bad stuff into Lake Champlain, also known as the source of Burlington's drinking water. So even though the Southern Connector did begin construction, only the curve from Route 7 to Home Avenue was ever built, as a remediation plan for the canal site was being drawn up. And that's what we can see today on the satellite map. In the 1990s, yet another iteration of the plan was developed as an interim routing to continue the road northward into downtown, now under the project name Champlain Parkway. After the curve up to Home Avenue, the Parkway would connect to Lakeside Avenue and then use an upgraded Pine Street to enter downtown. Since then, the routing has remained the same, though a series of revisions starting in the early 2000s up until recently further refined the design to reduce the roadway from 4 to 2 lanes, set a speed limit of 25 miles per hour, and add new sidewalks, bike lanes, and street trees in an effort to make the road feel more like a neighborhood street than a freeway. So why does the city of Burlington want to revive this decades-old plan? The project purpose is to make this new road the primary north-south connection between I-189 and the downtown area. Let's take a look at a map of Burlington and imagine we're driving towards downtown. I-189 ends and we have to exit onto Route 7. We head north on this 4-lane road until we get to the roundabout. Now we have to choose where exactly in downtown we want to end up. To the west, St. Paul Street is the most direct option. South Union Street brings us a few blocks east, or we could stay on Route 7 and skirt around the edge of downtown. While that seems like it all works, these 3 streets are very residential in nature, relatively narrow, and ultimately not designed to function as collector-distributor routes from a highway. The city of Burlington is hoping that by providing a dedicated through route that attempts to bypass as much of the residential neighborhood as possible, it will take traffic off the local streets. Now that all appears well and good, right? Heavy traffic gets removed from a neighborhood and put on a dedicated road, then rejoins Pine Street to head into downtown, which is largely an industrial and commercial road. Well, not so fast. Instead of traffic being distributed onto these 3 north-south roads, the Parkway project would concentrate the majority of that traffic onto Pine Street, which even though the land use along Pine Street is mostly industrial and commercial, the residential neighborhood in the Maple and King Streets area, a largely minority community, lies right at the terminus and would receive all this new traffic. Because this project had taken incredibly long to get to this point, a group of neighbors called the Pine Street Coalition filed a lawsuit in 2019 claiming that the 2009 Environmental Impact Statement was now invalid due to recently updated federal environmental justice standards and old census data. Because of this lawsuit, FHWA actually rescinded their record of decision, a key component for the project to move forward at all. Because of this, a new environmental analysis and community outreach had to be conducted for the northern Pine Street neighborhood. The Supplemental Environmental Impact Study found that the roadway upgrades, including coordinated traffic signals, would make traffic flow more smoothly and thus it was not a detriment to the community, and a new record of decision was issued in 2022. Now, this is just a small glimpse into the long history and steadfast opposition to this one project, which may make you start to wonder, at what point does the city just throw in the towel and stop trying to make the Champlain Parkway happen? 60 years and all they have to show for the plan is a half-mile of abandoned road. Does the city really need to spend the money to build a new road in order to fix traffic, which is a very fragile premise itself, instead of just saving the money and investing it in alternatives to driving cars into downtown? If you're ever confused as to why a city, an agency, or a company is making what seems like a questionable decision, there's one rule to keep in mind: follow the money. While the Champlain Parkway today is technically a local city project, it started out and has continued with oversight from the state of Vermont and the federal government, and Burlington only took it over in 1998. However, because federal money was spent on some of the initial work from the older plans, which the new Parkway plans build off of, it essentially means that FHWA wants to see this project to completion because they already fronted the money. And because the plan is so old, it was grandfathered into a system in which the project was funded at 95% by the federal government, 3% by the state, leaving only 2% as the local match. How could a city turn down getting a brand new road at a 98% discount? Well, that's the thing. FHWA makes sure that the city can't turn down the project, even if locally, city leaders decided that maybe the amount of opposition they've received over the decades might be a hint that the project shouldn't go forward. If the city of Burlington were to cancel the project, they would have to repay everything FHWA has funded so far, an amount of $14 million. Because of the 98% discount, the city determined that it would actually be cheaper to complete the project than cancel it. So where are we today? At the time of this video in September 2024, the portion of the Champlain Parkway between Home Avenue and Lakeside Avenue has officially opened. With this new road in place, which is considered Phase 1, the city will now move on to Phase 2, which involves reactivating the long-abandoned curve between I-189 and Home Avenue. Now, I'm not here to bash the project on every aspect. The new road is here whether you like it or not, so I wanted to really dive into the engineering design and take a critical look at some of the elements it includes. I think the most noticeable aspect is that the city did make the right decision in downsizing this from a proposed 4-lane expressway to a 2-lane road. Even though Parkway is in the name, the road itself really isn't any bigger than some of the adjacent roads, which limits its obtrusiveness. Even the transition from the I-189 highway segment to the local road at Home Avenue reduces to 2 lanes fairly quickly and sets up the context change with the narrowing and landscaped median. The standard Parkway cross-section includes 2 11-foot travel lanes, which are fairly standard for typical roads, and a multi-use pedestrian and bicycle path runs along the side to provide multimodal access. Although given the presence of this path, I don't understand why they're also showing sharrows in the road. Even though the speed limit is 25 miles per hour, I wouldn't want to bike in traffic coming from or bound for the highway when there's a separated path on the side, but maybe that's just me. At intersections, the roadway widens to 3 lanes to provide left turn lanes at the new traffic signals, which, yes, is a good thing, and it appears as though they are using a combination of protected and permissive left turns with the flashing yellow arrow, which I really like to see. Along the new Parkway road, there's also dozens of new trees between the road and the multi-use path, and stormwater management infrastructure makes appearances at a few locations. Once the route gets onto Pine Street, the multi-use path continues on the west side and bump outs are provided at intersections to reduce the pedestrian crossing distance and prevent parking in the crosswalks. There will also be a few raised intersections with a textured surface for traffic calming and accessibility. If all these improvements were retrofits to an existing road, kind of like what they're doing on Pine Street, this project would be an instant win. But I remain skeptical because of the fact that a new road is being built for the purpose of relieving traffic congestion. And to be honest, I'm not that confident that the Champlain Parkway will even become the preferred route by drivers. Coming from I-189, drivers will have to go a good amount out of their way towards downtown Burlington on the Champlain Parkway as compared to just getting off at Route 7 and heading straight into downtown like they do today. Unless the new road turns out to be super efficient and really speeds drivers on their way, I don't foresee navigation apps choosing the Parkway as the optimal route. This is a story that has been told for nearly 100 years, each time with the same result. Building more roads will not alleviate traffic. I'll read a quote from The Power Broker by Robert Caro, the famous biography about Robert Moses in New York. During the last 2 or 3 years before the war, a few planners had even begun to understand that without a balanced system, roads and bridges not only would not alleviate traffic congestion, but would aggravate it. Watching Moses open the Triborough Bridge to ease congestion on the Queensboro Bridge, and open the Bronx-Whitestone Bridge to ease congestion on the Triborough Bridge, and then watching traffic counts on all 3 bridges mount until each was as congested as one had been before, planners could hardly avoid the conclusion that traffic generation was no longer a theory but a proved fact. As more highways were built to alleviate congestion, more automobiles would pour onto them and congest them, thus forcing the building of more highways, which would generate more traffic and become congested in their turn, with awesome implications for the future of all urban areas. So the $14 million question is, will the new Champlain Parkway finally solve traffic in Burlington? Was it worth it for the city to cave to the FHWA and push the project ahead no matter what? Or, given the fact that Phase 1 of the project, even before any shovels hit the ground, was 57% over budget, should the city have canceled the project anyways and saved themselves the future budget overruns as well as the long-term maintenance costs of this new road? Well, it's still early to tell. Once I-189 is connected to the Parkway and traffic volumes readjust over the next few years, the results will show themselves. Keep an eye on this project, and we'll see if history proves itself yet again, or if the Champlain Parkway is the first project in 100 years to finally solve traffic.